Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, as always, do not hold that against me. Here once again to this time just kind of chat. I've had it's the end of the year. We're just starting off 2023. This is the first show of 2023, and I recently have been reminded of something that all of us have to deal with. So today's topic is really a little bit less specific about real estate, although we're going to talk specifically about how to manage lies in real estate. But this is something, I think, a mindset that you can carry with you throughout anything in life. And the important thing to remember is a lot of folks will let lying and other things sort of just toxify their day, right? It upsets them. It gets them crazy. And granted, I am kind of in that mode right now. I received a message within the last couple of weeks, and it really sort of pushed me over the edge. So let me give you a little background, and then we'll get into why I think this was a decent topic for a real estate podcast. So I frequently get people who email me who would like to be guests on the show. And for those of you who've been listening or watching for a while, you know that I don't do guests frequently. I do a lot of filtering. There's a lot of criteria that I adhere to avoid wasting your time and mine in terms of who I'm interviewing. And I get probably 4 or 5 a week of someone asking me, hey, I'd like to be a guest on your show. And that's the way it works. I very rarely ask someone else to come be a guest on the show. It's almost, in fact, every single, aside from the folks I interviewed last year or the year before who were buyers of mine, where we talked about the realities of the market from a buyer's perspective, those are the only folks I've ever asked to be interviewed on the show. But what I'd like to do is lay out for you the baloney detector, the BS meter. How do we develop it or make sure to acknowledge it, but continue to move forward with our goals, even in a scenario where we feel like we're being lied to? Now, in some cases in your life, you're going to be able to completely dismiss those people and not engage with them. In other instances, these could be people you work with. These could be folks that have something you want. Like, let's say you want to buy their house, or let's say you have to use their agent to negotiate with to buy the house. So in many cases, if you want to get what you are shooting for, if you want to accomplish your mission, whatever that might be, there will be people who lie that are in your way that you need to deal with. And being able to identify them and manage them is really at the core, I think, of being successful. And then also developing a mindset where you don't lose faith in humanity based on it, because there's plenty of people who don't hit the ground with lies. But unfortunately, there are a lot of folks who do. So as I said, I get 4 or 5 solicitations a week of folks who would like, maybe that's an exaggeration. I know I've gotten 4 or 5 in a week, but let's round it down to 3. I know it's at least 3 a week. And given how few actually make it onto the show, that should be an indicator to you that I'm pretty stringent with my filters. And it's not just about lying. It's about, is it relevant for you? Is it stuff that's going to enhance your knowledge or give you an additional superpower as it relates to dealing with things in real estate, or maybe even something more broadly as a lesson that will improve anything in your life, regardless of whether it's real estate or something else. So that's obviously the first bar. If it's shameless self-promotion, I'm less interested. But really one of my bars is, if you lie to me in the intro, if you lie to me in your email to me, that's a no-go. I find that people, in my experience, and again, I've been doing real estate specifically for 30 years. I've been, as you know, for my entire life, having to deal with folks who don't always tell the truth. But I wanted to hit you with an email I got, what day is today? Is the 2nd. So this would have been 11 or 12 days ago. And I'll sort of hit you with what it was, and I don't want to totally out this person, but this is a real estate person. They gave me their background. You know, they described themselves as an entrepreneur, a real estate agent, an investor, 2-time international best-selling author, and someone who became a millionaire at a young age, a specific age that they provided here that was pretty young. Well, there's some basic facts that are in there that I can check. And just like everyone else who pings me, I do a really quick Google check to see if what they're telling me is true. And if I find any lies in their initial encounter with me, that's a scenario where they don't have anything I want. So I don't have to put up with them. So I don't. And I typically simply don't respond. But this person lists off the book they wrote. And after describing it as an international bestseller, I went ahead and Googled it and discovered a couple of things. One, no, it's not an international bestseller. It's not a domestic bestseller. In fact, it's somewhere in the bottom few percentages of books in the areas that this book was written about. It has a grand total of 30 reviews on Amazon. And if you look at any book that's been in the top 10 in any given category, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume it wasn't just a bestseller like the New York Times bestseller, that it was a bestseller in a specific category. Even if I just do that, you find that books that fit that bill have at least 1,000 reviews. You may find some in the top 10, like in the business area, that are calendars and other things that have fewer. But an actual book that was written by an actual person, thousands, 1,000 or more. And there was literally 30. Second, the publisher here is a vanity press, well known for she doesn't write the book. This specific vanity press specifically writes the book for you. They assign a ghostwriter to you, who then helps you put the book together. So and out the door, once you're done, you actually have to spend $60,000 with these people, $40,000 to $60,000, in order for this to happen. So lots and lots of lies. So why should I believe anything else in this bio or in this pitch when you open with a lie? I tend to check everyone, but there was something about this that struck me as, this is going to end up not being true. Maybe it was just the sheer number of things. I don't know. I've had other people approach me with the same kind of pitch who I didn't get the vibe they were lying to me. So where is that line? Where do you figure out where the line is in your head of determining if something is deceptive or not deceptive? And again, I'm not a purist here. I get that people will tell a lie to not hurt someone else's feelings, or if it's nothing that's a big deal, or it would be hurtful, or it would really hurt someone else's feelings in some cases. That's so I'm not being a purist here. I'm not expecting 100% compliance with the I never tell a fib rule. But if you're willing to tell materially incorrect facts, particularly about yourself, right? There's no question. This is not a misunderstanding. This is not this is what they thought was true about something else. This is someone describing themselves. This is someone talking about what they have or haven't done or accomplished, and pitching it as a reality when just less than five, a minute of Googling will prove that it's a lie. So I would never partner with someone like this. And I frequently talk to people who want to partner on multifamily deals or investment deals. And I do backgrounds on all of those folks when I talk to them. And that's just one of the many things I'll do when I'm analyzing someone I might go into business with, of course. But this was such a huge pile of bull that it was difficult to find any other motive other than straight up lying for self-aggrandizement, right? All right. So, and you would be surprised how many, or maybe you wouldn't, how many of those, on average, 3 or 4 a week, I get requests to be guests on the show are removed for lying because I've detected that they've misled or tried to mislead me. And it's probably about 30%. And that's just the ones I've figured. Sometimes if they don't make it past this would be an interesting topic stage, I don't even do a background check to figure other things out, right? So who knows how many of those might fall into that category. And I have to figure that since I am in the seat I sit in, so many people pitch things to me to get access to you, my audience, who I tend to protect from these people. I have to think that maybe it's not so much, doesn't occur so much in your life that it's not something that you are particularly preoccupied with. But in the world of real estate, particularly when you're trying to buy something or sell something, while you may want to stand entirely on your own personal ethics, and if someone deceives you, you simply won't go into business with them. And truth be told, I had a client a few years ago who was selling a property. I was their agent, and we discovered some lying on the part of some folks and completely eliminated them from the transaction. He said, I don't care. I don't care if they're the highest offer. I am not going to do any business with someone who lies so flagrantly. And you can make that decision. That can absolutely be something you do. As your agent, it's my goal to help you achieve your goal. And if you decide you want to sell a house, or if you decide you want to buy a house, it's my goal to make that happen for you. In my eyes, you win the game, if you want to call it that, if you achieve that, in spite of any shortcomings of anyone else in the process. So the real value here isn't necessarily identifying someone who's deceptive so you can eliminate them, but identifying someone as deceptive and using that knowledge to help you further your goal. And I know that's got a whole Machiavelli thing. We could have a nice discussion over an adult beverage someday about whether it's a Machiavellian way to look at the world, or whether we should all be looking at it like Rousseau. Who knows? But the reality is, in my eyes, they win to some degree if you don't get what you want out of the interaction. So my goal is always to help you get what you want out of the interaction. And I want that to be what you're after as well. Now, if you discover someone who directly works for you, if you discover your real estate agent is willfully lying to you, and I'm not talking about an error, because we all make mistakes, right? Maybe, whether it's about a number where they forgot to carry the 2, that's a separate thing. But if you have someone who is supposed to be serving your needs who's deceptive, my first instinct would be to simply get rid of them. And I think if you are honest with them about the reason why, 2 things are going to happen. One, if you have already signed an agreement with them for you to be working with them as them being your agent, likely you'll be able to get out of that without complications. And 2, you might just be that inspiration for that person to turn over a new leaf and embrace a more honest way of dealing with people, particularly people to whom they owe a fiduciary responsibility. All right. So the first thing that you want to figure out is someone lying to me? And I tend to lean more towards the facts part of it. If you communicate facts to me and I can prove that those facts are incorrect, I just need then to decide whether it was an intentional misdirection on your part, or it was just a mistake. You just misunderstood, or you confused it with something else. But there are some little tidbits here, and some of these contradict each other. So I'll lay them out for you just as a quick review of things you might want to keep in your head as you're interacting with someone. Number 1 on this list, and this is from several different online sources, and I'll point out where they contradict one another. Answers to questions may be shorter. Now, this one is definitely a common thread among all the tips on how to identify when someone is possibly being deceptive. And I guess I go with this. It may be shorter because they're trying to make it up, and they're not very good at making up something that is more rich in detail, so they're being more short. But I know that if someone asks me a straightforward question, I have a straightforward answer. I give the straightforward answer. I don't embellish a lot on it. I simply give them what I know. So I'm not sure that would be something I'd hang a whole lot on. Number 2, they avoid giving specific details. This is one that I've used before. And to be really upfront with you, whenever I'm working with a client and we decide to enter into a deal, whether I'm representing the buyer or the seller, once we get into that point where someone's submitting an offer, I like to have private conversations with the agent for the other side, just so I can assess the relationship. And I would suggest that you encourage your agent to do it if they're not already doing it. You will be amazed, or you would be amazed, if you heard what some agents will say to other agents. It's as if some folks believe that since we're all part of this club of real estate agents, that things you say about people won't influence how I treat you. And I've had agents say some really terrible things about their clients, about my clients, about people involved in the transaction. And definitely try to sway me with things that I know not to be the case. So once I know I'm dealing with someone like that, suddenly all kinds of things fit into the mix that maybe wouldn't have otherwise. So, and we'll cover that in a minute. We'll cover this at the end once we've gone over sort of the bullet points. They may fidget less. Most people expect a liar to be fidgety, according to this person, but in some cases, they may actually move less than truth tellers. And then there's another online psychological source that says they fidget more. So fidget less or fidget more, and you're a liar. They don't look away while thinking. Now, I always was told that when you look, is it looking up and to the left, you're engaging the creative side of your brain, so you're about to tell a story. And if someone does that, they're about to tell you something they're making up. But according to this, people often expect that liars will avoid eye contact during a conversation, but this is not always the case. And I found this to be true. According to this particular outlet, if anything, liars are more likely to attempt to hold your gaze, given if they don't keep it up, even if they don't keep it up. That's absolutely true. I have had several folks in the past, when I was representing the seller, I had buyer clients trying to give me excuses on why they couldn't complete certain parts of the contract or why things were late or what was happening. And they were huge virtue signalers, and that's going to be my add-on to this list. But they were very much the lock your gaze people. Number 5, they repeat the questions before answering. I'm trying to think if I ever do this. I do this if I don't understand the question or if I really am not sure about the answer. But then if I don't know the answer, I'll just say I don't know the answer. So I don't know. Since I don't say anything after that, maybe you don't take that as a hint that I'm lying because I'm not saying anything. They have specific nervous tics. They do grooming behaviors like smoothing their hair. They gesture toward themselves while talking. They press their lips together when asked a sensitive question. I think those are valid cues that you might consider. Again, none of these individually should be you identifying a liar. They should simply be in the list of things that have you concerned about whether or not they're being truthful with you. Number 7, they start out talking slowly, then speed up. Unless you are now talking about a more charged topic, changes in the cadence of speech is often an indicator that folks are being deceptive. If you ask a question and within the answer of that question, they shift from one cadence to another, that's something I would put on the list of might be lying to me. Number 8, they repeat the same exact story each time. The details never changed. It's always exactly the same. In some cases, even the sentence structure is exactly the same. That's one you'll learn when you have your children lying to you, because that's typically one way to call it out. So that's theirs. And then one of mine is, I typically, and this isn't maybe lying, it may just be exaggerating, but in my experience, over 30 years of doing this, the people who virtue signal the most tend to be liars and folks who will not follow through on their commitments and expect you to simply be okay with that. Now, over my 30 years, I'm happy to say I've probably encountered I haven't encountered less than 10 people who don't tell the truth. But in terms of the virtue signaling variety, because sometimes these folks are super convincing, they will typically virtue signal about something. And the most recent example that comes to mind is someone who was putting out that they were a very religious person and did a lot of charity work and, ended conversations with "have a blessed day," those kinds of things. And that's not those things by themselves are not bad, but when they are so dominant, when they are so oppressively involved in the conversation every single time, and every time you meet them, you're getting a story about some thing they did, some charitable thing that they did. I think that's a cue to be a little suspicious, because here's what I found. People who do that stuff don't brag about it. I have met several clients who were seller clients of mine who I would call and we needed to talk about something and say, well, hold on just a second. And I'd ask them where they are. They're feeding the homeless at a homeless shelter. No, they never bragged about doing that stuff. They never told me about it. It's the folks who really lay it out there and lay it on thick that are the ones you need to step back and wonder about. And in that particular case, of a buyer who was pulling that kind of stuff, I start asking more questions about what they were doing, indicating my interest in helping out and participating. Where can I donate stuff to that effort? And there's never a good answer. There's never enough information for me to actually pin down what they were doing or where, to really back it up. So just things that I think are valuable to you in terms of identifying it. But then once you find them, and this is the part that I think is important, is to not immediately assume that the best way for you to move forward is to then either back out of the deal or fire them or whatever. Firing them, I think, is good if it's someone who's supposed to be on your side doing something for you. But here's what I tend to do. So let's say if I detect that I'm dealing with a real estate agent who is a liar, I don't assume anything they're telling me is true. And it's always wise to do that anyway, to a certain degree. But for instance, let's say, and this has also happened, they are providing all of the property inspections up front, which is very common now and was the way to do it for the last 2 years. Do I then trust those inspections to be accurate? And in a scenario where I've detected that these folks tend to lie about these just basic things, I am willing to bet, since I've been around an awful long time, if there's a home inspection company that I've never heard of in this area doing this kind of work on a house, I'm going to ask for my own inspection. I am not going to trust their inspections, simply because this is could very well be, since they've already shown a enthusiasm for deception, this could be a service provider that they have a relationship with where they can simply tell them, well, hey, yeah, don't report that thing. So the trust level needs to drop in terms of documents that they're supplying. If you detect this problem directly with a seller or a buyer and you're on the opposite side of the transaction from them, my response to that has always been to put into writing whatever they tell you verbally and ask them to sign it. A good example, we were looking at a off-grid property, and they were verbally telling us, and we were already going to verify this by having a well inspection, but they were talking about how many gallons per minute they get and how much water they have stored up and all these other types of things. And of course, our inspection would reveal it. But any claims that they would make verbally to me or to my clients privately was something that I would then document and ask for a signature on. You're not always going to get away with that. If it's a very hardcore seller's market, that's something you may not be willing to do, but it is absolutely something you need to be aware of and come up with a plan to independently verify what you're being told. Now, again, this should always be due diligence of verification of what you're being told. But once you've detected that there's a little bit of deception going on, it's good to heighten your interest in that and to elevate it as a priority for you to take a closer look at. And that has helped many times in the past over the years as I've been doing this. And I'm hoping that it'll be something that helps you. So figure out for yourself where this leaves you. Does this leave you in a scenario where you simply want to eliminate those kinds of folks from anything in your life? Or do you simply calmly, without getting frustrated, recognize there are simply people who do that and navigate around them? Do not allow them to be an obstacle to you getting what you want, because you may discover that the person who owns the house you want to spend the rest of your life in is a big fat liar. But here's the deal. You're never going to see those people again. You're probably never going to see the agent from the other side again. Do you know the name of the guy who sold you your car? These aren't relationships that you're going to maintain over decades or even years. These are relationships that are going to happen over the course of about 40 days. And once it's over, do you have what you wanted or don't you have what you wanted? And if you do have it, did you at least acquire it in a way that protected you as much as possible, where you took a little extra effort to look at things that you found to be more suspect because of the deception, and look at it as a benefit? If you know that someone has a tendency to be deceptive about things, that clues you in to a need to take a closer look at a variety of things that you may have simply accepted. So Again, this is a real life thing. If you're on a first date and you catch someone doing this stuff, that's a scenario where you might never want to see that person again. But I tell you, if you're buying a house and you love the house, the strategies involved to help you get what you want might include just figuring out how to use that information rather than to exclude or avoid that person. All right. I really, and this was one where I wanted to get on and rant. And for those of you who listened to the podcast in the old days, I spent a lot of time ranting. Oh, and this is year 16. This podcast started on January of 2006, 2007. I can't remember, but it's been around a long time. Thanks to those of you who still listen. I still have people who've been listening since the beginning. Which is amazing to me because it's done a lot of iterations. It's only been in its current form on just hosted on a server for 6 years or 7 years or 8 years. I used to do it live. I used to do it on Blog Talk Radio, where I would do a 2 to 3 hour show every Saturday morning and take calls live, that was the Wild West of the Real Estate Realities podcast days. But anyway, so happy anniversary to the show. Thanks to those of you who've come along for so long and joined me in the conversations relating to real estate, and welcome all you new folks. We have seen an uptick in the number of folks who subscribe to the show, and I appreciate that. I hope, and again, if you would like to reach out to me, if there are subjects that you want to discuss about real estate, things that annoy you, things that concern you, things that make you worry, get in touch. Head on over to soldbyrobert.com, click on Contact Robert, and send me a message. Let me know what you're thinking, what you're worrying about. I'll be happy to either talk to you directly and help address whatever the concerns are that you have, or talk about it on the show and maybe even get some feedback from other listeners on the subject you're interested in. All right, folks, here we are. As always, the goal is to leave more knowledge on the table than I've taken up in your time. I sure hope we've accomplished that this week. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2023, and I will talk to you all next time.